before the BAFTAs, before the knighthoods, before the red carpets and the glossy magazine covers. There were quiet deals made far away from cameras, behind closed doors, in drawing rooms where nothing was ever written down. And yet, everything changed there. What you are about to hear has been whispered in the corridors of British cinema for decades, carefully avoided in official biographies, politely brushed aside in interviews, and almost entirely erased from the polished version of film history we were all taught to believe. But today, none of that matters, because we are finally laying it out, clearly, directly, and without hesitation. 10 British actors who rose through the ranks of cinema's elite. 10 powerful aging divas who controlled access, influence, and opportunity. And 10 controversial relationships that allegedly blurred the line between ambition and intimacy in ways the industry never fully admitted. This isn't the version of British film history you've seen in documentaries. This is the version that lived in whispers. And once you understand it, the entire idea of fame starts to look very different. So stay with this till the end, because number 10 changes everything. And after that, you may never watch some of these legendary performances the same way again. 1. Laurence Harvey. Let us start with a man who understood, perhaps better than anyone of his generation, that ambition without strategy is merely daydreaming. Laurence Harvey arrived in British cinema from relatively humble origins, and he was sharp enough to recognize very early on that the industry operated on connections as much as craft. His striking physical appearance, that angular, coolly handsome face, was not simply a gift. In his hands, it became a tool, deliberately and methodically employed. Rather than endure the grinding uncertainty of the traditional audition circuit, Harvey identified a far more direct route to prominence. He cultivated close relationships with established, influential women in the theatrical world, women who had already built the very networks he needed to access. The most significant of these early alliances was with a celebrated and wealthy theatrical figure, considerably his senior. Margaret, as she was known in those circles, was not merely a companion in any conventional sense, and she represented something far more valuable to the young Harvey. She was his direct passage into the highest echelons of the acting establishment. Their union generated considerable whispers across the industry, but it produced results. Through her connections and her advocacy, Harvey found himself cast in prestigious dramatic productions during the late 1950s and well into the 1960s, sharing the frame with figures of genuine legendary standing. Those who knew the arrangement well noted a particular quality to it, or rather, a particular absence of quality. Friends of the established actress observed that she was genuinely, deeply captivated by Harvey's youth and his attention. Harvey, by most accounts, remained rather coolly focused on what the alliance could produce professionally, and it was not a partnership of equals in any emotional sense. As his status as a leading man solidified, the marriage dissolved. The ambition, however, did not dissolve with it. Harvey subsequently entered into a relationship with the widow of a formidable studio magnate, Joan, an immensely wealthy woman with the kind of transatlantic reach that could extend a career from London to Los Angeles. This second high-profile union completed his transformation from struggling newcomer to established cinematic figure on both sides of the Atlantic. Critics remained persistently divided on Harvey as a performer. His work was frequently described as cold, detached, technically proficient, but emotionally remote. One might reasonably wonder whether a man who had spent his formative years performing devotion he did not feel had simply lost the ability to locate genuine emotion on cue. He lived well, expensively, and lavishly, supported in significant part by the wealth of his alliances. The ending, however, was not the comfortable retirement his planning might have anticipated. In the early 1970s, illness intervened with brutal efficiency. Laurence Harvey died at the age of 45. His legacy remains divided, a genuinely capable actor who chose a path that compromised his artistic credibility and who paid a price that no amount of strategic planning could have accounted for. 2. Peter Finch. If Laurence Harvey was the cold strategist, Peter Finch was something rather different. Wilder, more charismatic, more compelling, and in many respects, more dangerous. He arrived in London from considerably further afield, without the refined classical training that characterized his British peers, without the social connections that smoothed the path for those who had attended the right schools. What he possessed instead was an almost feral magnetism, a quality that polite British society found simultaneously unsettling and completely irresistible. The alliance that transformed his career was, by any measure, an extraordinary one. He found himself drawn into the orbit of the reigning theatrical queen of the era, a woman of unassailable reputation and immense influence, who happened to be married to one of the most respected theatrical knights in the country. The marriage, by accounts of the period, had grown cold and isolating. She was lonely. Finch was anything but cold. Their connection moved rapidly from backstage fascination to full romantic entanglement, and the consequences for Finch's career were immediate and dramatic. Directors who had previously declined to take his calls were suddenly sending scripts. Publications that had never printed his name were running photographs. The established actress deployed her influence with what those close to her described as genuine devotion. She wanted him to succeed, and she had the means to make it happen. The personal cost of the arrangement, however, was considerable. The legendary actress was known for emotional volatility and an increasingly fragile mental state. Finch found himself simultaneously required to be devoted lover and steady caretaker, maintaining an emotional performance in private that was arguably more demanding than anything he delivered on screen. When the relationship eventually ended, the career objective had been achieved. Peter Finch had crossed over from rugged, unknown outsider to one of the most sought-after leading men of his generation, a transition that culminated in the most prestigious recognition the industry can offer. He won the Academy Award for his performance in Network, though he did not live to collect it in person. Peter Finch collapsed in a hotel lobby in the late 1970s at the age of 60, dying before the ceremony took place. Those who remembered his early years in London understood the full arc of the story. The award was genuine, but the doorway through which he first entered, that had been opened by someone else entirely. 3. Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton arrived on the theatrical scene with something that cannot be entirely manufactured, a dark, brooding physical intensity that drew attention the moment he entered a room. In the fiercely competitive landscape of the 1970s, talent without positioning was frequently invisible. Dalton understood this intuitively. His opportunity came during the production of a major historical piece, in which he found himself working opposite one of the true titans of the British acting dynasty, a woman of absolute theatrical authority, significantly his senior, who carried the weight of a legendary career behind her. The chemistry between them moved beyond the script with some speed. Their romantic entanglement became the principal subject of conversation in every significant London social circle of the period. And for Dalton, the professional consequences were transformative. His name, now permanently associated with one of the most celebrated actresses of the era, reached the desks of international casting directors who had not previously considered him. The doors that open through merit alone take years. The doors that open through association can move in a matter of months. She introduced him to producers, financiers, and the kind of elite social network that takes most performers a full career to access. He was present in those rooms, he was charming and capable, and he used the opportunity with considerable intelligence. The alliance lasted for over a decade, long enough to establish him thoroughly in the international cinematic landscape. The ultimate professional result came in the late 1980s. when Dalton secured what is arguably the most iconic role in British cinema, stepping into the tuxedo of the world's most famous fictional secret agent. Industry insiders, even those who admired his eventual achievement, acknowledged quietly that the path to that role had been considerably smoothed by the devotion and industry authority of his former companion. Dalton has spent his subsequent career maintaining an intensely private, personal life. The history of those early years is not something he has ever been inclined to revisit publicly. Before we continue, if you are finding this genuinely illuminating, please do share it with someone who loves the real history of British cinema. And if you have not already subscribed, this is precisely the sort of content we produce regularly. Now, back to the list, because we are only halfway through, and the stories become considerably more remarkable from here. 4. Oliver Tobias. Oliver Tobias entered the 1970s cinematic world with an exotic, rebellious appeal that was deliberately at odds with the refined classical tradition of his contemporaries. His physical presence was his primary currency, and he spent it with calculated awareness. He moved through the glamorous and exclusive social circles of London with considerable ease, and it was within those rooms that he attracted the sustained attention of an immensely powerful and famously alluring leading lady, a woman who reigned as the ultimate symbol of high society glamour and was known throughout the industry for passionate, tempestuous, romantic entanglements. Their highly visible connection dominated the gossip columns of the period. For a largely unknown performer, being photographed consistently on the arm of a figure of her stature produced an immediate elevation in professional standing that the conventional route could not have delivered in half a decade. She introduced him to the network, producers, financiers, casting directors, and the roles arrived. He was cast in major productions, his rebellious persona fully capitalized upon by studios eager to leverage the public fascination surrounding his private life. The difficulty, as it proved to be for several men on this list, was the question of independent identity. The critics were often withering, dismissing him as little more than an attractive accessory to a more famous woman. His own artistic voice was difficult to hear above the noise of the alliance. When the relationship ended, he navigated the remainder of his career on steadier but less spectacular terms, working consistently through the 1980s and beyond, but never again reaching the heights that the alliance had briefly placed within reach. His story is one of genuine ambition meeting genuine limitation, a man who secured an extraordinary position through strategic association, but who could not entirely transcend it. 5. Maxwell Caulfield. Maxwell Caulfield arrived from Britain to Hollywood in the early 1980s, armed with what can only be described as extraordinary physical perfection and a precise understanding of how to deploy it. The Hollywood competition of that era was vicious. Caulfield, still only 21 years of age, made a decision that was either supremely calculating or supremely fortunate, depending on one's perspective. He crossed paths with a deeply revered actress approaching 40, a member of a genuinely legendary British theatrical family, a pillar of the artistic community with decades of experience and a contact book of incalculable value. The age gap, she nearly 20 years his senior, created precisely the kind of press sensation that the era thrived upon. Overnight, an entirely unknown young man became the most discussed figure in the entertainment world purely by virtue of the alliance. The established actress did not merely endorse him privately. She championed him fiercely and publicly, demanding from studio executives the best treatment for her young companion, protecting his newly acquired status with the full force of her industry standing. The results were remarkable. Caulfield was cast as the leading man in a massively anticipated musical sequel, positioned to become a defining idol of the decade. He bypassed the audition circuit almost entirely, stepping directly into major screen contracts on the strength of the alliance and the public fascination it generated. The foundation, however, proved fragile. When his cinematic debut failed to meet the astronomical box office expectations placed upon it, the industry's warmth cooled rapidly. He continued to work, television roles, ongoing projects, safely supported by the enduring alliance with the established actress. His story illustrates something rather important about the arrangement as a mechanism. It can open extraordinary doors, but it cannot guarantee what happens once you step through them. 6. Liam Neeson. This particular history is not widely discussed, but those who were working in the London theatrical world of the early 1980s remember it clearly. Liam Neeson arrived from the north, a towering physical presence, raw and unrefined, with none of the polish that the classical London training circuit produced. In those early years, he was entirely unknown, unable to secure even minor television appearances. He needed an introduction to the London artistic world, and he received one on the set of a grand medieval cinematic production. There, he crossed paths with an undisputed queen of the classical British stage, a woman of significantly greater experience, deeply respected across the entire industry, possessing influence that was both genuine and extensive. She was captivated by his unrefined masculine presence. She took him, in the most practical sense, under her wing, inviting him to share her London residence, securing him a prestigious theatrical agent who handled exclusively the elite tier of British cinema, and introducing him personally to the circles that he had no other means of accessing. Before this alliance, Neeson was invisible to the industry. Within months of its formation, he was attending the most exclusive premieres, being photographed alongside a figure of genuine legendary standing, and being noticed by directors who had previously had no reason to look in his direction. She championed his early career with sustained, genuine commitment, ensuring he was considered for significant supporting roles, using her network to keep his name in circulation. As his own star began its ascent, the pressure of living in the shadow of a considerably more famous companion became increasingly difficult. The relationship dissolved as he established his independent footing in the international landscape. Today, Neeson is celebrated as one of the most recognized action figures and dramatic performers of his generation. The route he took to arrive at that position, however, ran directly through the drawing room and the professional network of a significantly older and deeply established woman who believed in him before anyone else had reason to. 7. Jude Law. The London of the early 1990s was, for ambitious young performers, simultaneously thrilling and impenetrable. The established aristocratic cliques of the theatrical world did not admit newcomers easily. Jude Law possessed an almost unsettlingly beautiful face and an ambition that was equally striking. What he lacked was the entry point. He found it in the form of a deeply established, prominently connected actress who occupied a central position in the most exclusive artistic circles of the capital. A woman anchored to a powerful musical and cinematic dynasty, considerably older than the young Law, and by all accounts, genuinely and completely captivated by his youthful perfection. She made significant personal sacrifices to draw him into her world, including, by documented accounts, the abandonment of a prominent existing marriage. The alliance that resulted was, in professional terms, a masterclass in strategic positioning. Law was suddenly not merely an aspiring performer wandering the outer edges of the industry. He was residing, figuratively and in many respects literally, at the center of British entertainment. She championed him with tireless energy, pushing him toward the most significant auditions, introducing him to every producer and director of consequence, dressing him, promoting him, and shielding him from the harsher realities of the industry's judgment. He secured the prestigious, internationally visible roles that established his face on a global audience's awareness. They became the most photographed couple of the entire decade. When his own fame ultimately eclipsed hers, as it inevitably did, the alliance fractured under the weight of his expanding trajectory. He went on to become one of the highest-paid leading men in the world, with a career that has proven both durable and varied. The industry historians who were present in those early years understand the full picture. The talent was genuine. But the mechanism that delivered that talent to the world's attention was the devoted, strategic, wholly committed advocacy of an older woman who opened every door he subsequently walked through. 8. Michael York. Michael York arrived in the 1960s with a flawless aristocratic appearance and a refined theatrical background, but lacking the international connections that transform a capable British stage actor into a globally recognized cinematic figure. His catalyst was somewhat different in character to those of his contemporaries. He formed a deep alliance with a profoundly connected woman of high society, not an actress herself, but something arguably more powerful in terms of reach. A prominent figure in the world of fashion and cultural observation, she held access to the most exclusive artistic circles across the entire European continent, and she was thoroughly enchanted by York's pristine, aristocratic beauty. She took him fully into her world, into the opulent gatherings of foreign capitals, into the company of legendary international directors, into the rooms where the careers of the next decade's leading men were decided over dinner. Through her advocacy, her connections, and the social legitimacy that her companionship conferred, York bypassed the exhausting standard route entirely. He was cast in massive historical epics and groundbreaking musical productions during the late 1960s and early 1970s, the kind of roles that established international careers. She shaped his public persona as much as his directors did, ensuring his face appeared in the most influential global publications, constructing the aristocratic cinematic identity that became his professional signature. The achievement was genuine and durable. York went on to considerable and lasting fame, working alongside the most celebrated names of the era. The mechanism, however, was an alliance with a significantly older, brilliantly established woman whose devotion to his career was as instrumental as anything he produced himself. 9. Rupert Everett. Rupert Everett arrived in the decadent, intensely social cinematic world of the 1980s with a combination of devastating physical appearance and sharp, cynical intelligence that was entirely his own. He moved through the highest social circles with what appeared to be effortless confidence. The rooms of international royalty and established artistic powerhouses were his natural environment, or at least he performed as though they were. Within those circles, he attracted the sustained attention of a profoundly influential older woman, a genuine titan of the literary and cinematic worlds, a figure who reigned over the intellectual elite of the capital with absolute authority. She was mesmerized by his dangerous youthful perfection and the genuine sharpness of his mind. Their connection became the centerpiece of every significant society column of the period. The professional consequences were immediate. Doors opened, roles were offered. His face appeared in publications that had previously been entirely unaware of his existence. The established woman introduced him to producers, financiers, and international industry figures of consequence. His name, attached to hers, carried a weight it could not yet have earned independently. The difficulty, as Everett has acknowledged in later years with rather more candor than most subjects of this discussion, was the question of identity. Living in the colossal shadow of an established cultural icon made it genuinely difficult to be seen as an independent artistic force. The critics were frequently brutal, dismissing him as an attractive accessory to greater fame. The alliance eventually collapsed under the accumulated pressure of those competing demands. His story remains one of the most honest illustrations of the mechanism's fundamental tension. The alliance opens the door, but it can also define the doorway so completely that stepping through it into independent space becomes extraordinarily difficult. 10. Ralph Fiennes. And so we arrive at our final name, the one we promised at the beginning would be the most striking of the 10, Ralph Fiennes was, by the early 1990s, building a genuinely solid reputation within the prestigious classical companies of the capital. His craft was real, his dedication evident, his intensity on stage the subject of considerable professional admiration. But solid reputations within classical theater and global cinematic stardom are different territories entirely, and crossing from one to the other required, as it so often has throughout this history, a particular kind of catalyst. That catalyst arrived in the form of a formidable, a universally revered older leading lady, a recognized queen of the British stage and screen with decades of profound influence, a fiercely loyal following, and an industry standing that was beyond serious question. She was 17 years his senior. Their alliance, formed during a demanding classical theatrical production, generated shockwaves through the British establishment that reverberated for years. He left his existing quiet life to stand beside her. The professional consequences were transformative in a manner that even he, with his considerable talent, could not have engineered independently. Because he was now at the center of the most debated, most visible romantic alliance of the decade. His name was everywhere. International directors who might not otherwise have reached for a classical stage actor were suddenly pressing to meet him. The darkness and intensity of the controversy surrounding his personal life aligned perfectly with the quality of brooding menace he brought to his screen performances. She provided social legitimacy, elite artistic introductions, and a public spotlight of extraordinary intensity. He secured, during the years of their alliance, the most coveted leading roles in globally celebrated historical productions, roles that established him as one of the most respected performers of his generation. When the alliance eventually dissolved after many years, the cinematic legacy he had constructed during that period was wholly and permanently his own. Today, Ralph Fiennes is celebrated as one of the finest actors Britain has produced in the modern era. The talent that underpins that reputation is genuine and unassailable. But the historians of that period, those who remember the classical stages of the early 1990s and the shock of that very public alliance, understand precisely what ignited the global spotlight that made that talent visible to the world. 10 men, 10 careers, 10 relationships that the official histories have largely chosen to overlook. What this account reveals is not scandal for its own sake. It reveals something rather more interesting, the hidden mechanics of an industry that presented itself as a pure meritocracy while operating beneath the polished surface on the very human currency of connection, devotion, and strategic alliance. And the women in these stories are rarely discussed as the central figures. And yet, in every case, they were the architects. They opened the doors, made the introductions, provided the legitimacy, and, in several cases, gave rather more than they received in return. The careers that resulted were real. The talent, in most cases, was genuine. But the pathway? The pathway was laid by someone else. That is the story that old Britain, old Hollywood, and the golden era of the silver screen would very much prefer remained behind the velvet curtain. Now you know what was behind it. If this piece has given you a new perspective on the careers you thought you understood, please do give it a like. It genuinely helps this channel continue producing this caliber of historical content. Subscribe if you have not already, and leave a comment below telling us which of these 10 stories surprised you the most. We shall see you in the next one.